The sky above the occupied capital was no longer blue, but a fractured violet, permanently stained by the gravitational shadow of the flagship hanging in orbit. Its hull stretched across the heavens like a second horizon, vast and deliberate, a structure so immense that weather patterns bent politely around it. In the streets below, conversations never rose above a murmur. Even the wind seemed cautious. Inside the throne chamber of that hovering colossus, silence was engineered. Sound-absorbing alloys lined the curved walls, and the floor shimmered with a lattice of hard light panels projecting a slow rotation of nearby star systems. Each step taken upon it was a reminder. Entire suns could be dimmed with a gesture from the woman seated at the center. She looked, at first glance, entirely human. Dark hair fell in controlled waves over armor woven from reactive starlight filaments. Her posture was flawless, her expression composed to the edge of mercilessness. Only her ears, long, elegant, tapering upward with an almost elven grace, marked her as something beyond Earth's ancestry. Those ears twitched ever so slightly when the chamber doors opened. The human was escorted in by two sentinel constructs, their silver limbs humming with contained plasma. He had been searched, scanned, analyzed down to the atomic irregularities in his bones. He was unarmed, statistically insignificant, biologically unimpressive. He did not kneel. A ripple passed through the court like a software glitch. Advisors shifted. A general's armored gauntlet tightened with an audible creak. The quantum chandeliers above recalibrated their light spectrum, as if even they expected lightning to follow. The queen regarded him with a gaze that had broken admirals and silenced rebellions. "You understand," she said, her voice amplified subtly by the chamber's acoustic field, "that every being who stands where you stand has trembled." He glanced down at the luminous map beneath his boots. "It's very pretty," he said. "Are those live star feeds? Because if I step on one by accident, I'd hate to cause a supernova." A sharp intake of breath swept the chamber. Her eyes narrowed. "You attempt humor." "I attempt survival," he replied. "I've found the two occasionally overlap." A faint, dangerous pause settled between them. The air pressure subtly increased, a deliberate intimidation tactic. The human swayed slightly, then steadied himself. "Your name," she demanded. He gave it. His voice did not crack. "You are aware," she continued, "that I command fleets capable of reducing your species to historical trivia." "Yes," he said. "It was mentioned in the welcome brochure." One of the advisors made a strangled noise that might have been outrage or suppressed laughter. The queen did not look away from the human. "Why," she asked at last, each word precise as a laser cut, "do you not fear me?" There it was, the question that had shattered diplomats, the inquiry that usually preceded executions. He considered her carefully, and for a moment the chamber's vastness seemed to contract around them. "I do," he said simply. "I'm not reckless, I'm just selective." A murmur stirred. "You stand upright before me," she said. "You do not shake." He tilted his head slightly. "Respectfully, Your Majesty, you look exhausted." The temperature in the chamber dropped 2 degrees. Her long ears angled back a fraction. "Explain." "You've conquered 12 systems in 8 cycles. Your fleet rotations are stretched thin. Your outer rim governors are already posturing for autonomy, and you haven't blinked in 30 seconds. Silence. He gestured lightly toward the hovering casualty projections flickering behind her throne. "You're not a monster, you're overworked." Several guards shifted, uncertain whether to strike him down or request clarification. Her gaze sharpened, but something else flickered beneath it, calculation. "You presume much." "I observe," he corrected gently. "There's a difference." The queen rose. The motion was unhurried, but the chamber reacted as if struck by a gravitational wave. Her armor shimmered, responding to biometric spikes. The human's pulse accelerated. A nearby drone displayed it helpfully in red numerals above his shoulder. He noticed. "That's a little invasive," he muttered. "I usually wait until the 3rd conversation before sharing heart rates." A suppressed snort came from somewhere in the ranks. She descended the steps of her throne, each footfall echoing like a verdict. Up close, the faint luminescent patterns beneath her skin were visible bioluminescent circuitry tracing her collarbone. Her presence was immense, not merely political but physical, as if space acknowledged her authority. She stopped an arm's length away. "You believe fear is inefficient," she said quietly. "I believe it's lonely," he replied, her long ears stilled. Around them, the throne chamber held its breath, suspended between annihilation and something far less predictable. The first time she requested a private audience with the human, Half the fleet assumed someone had misfiled a death warrant. The meeting did not take place in the throne chamber. Instead, it unfolded within the flagship's strategic observatory, a circular chamber suspended near the ship's core, where transparent alloy walls revealed the slow rotation of stars beyond the hull. Nebulae drifted like spilled ink across the darkness, and distant suns pulsed in dignified silence. The room hummed faintly with the sound of containment fields holding back vacuum and catastrophe with equal professionalism. She stood at the center console, fingers gliding across a lattice of holographic projections. Entire armadas shimmered above her palm in miniature, their trajectories marked by luminous arcs. With a subtle gesture, she dismissed 3 war simulations and opened a resource allocation matrix instead. The numbers did not improve. The door irised open behind her. "You summoned me," the human said, stepping inside. He paused, glancing at the transparent walls. "I assume this room is structurally sound." "It has survived direct meteor impact," she replied without turning. "You may survive the conversation." "That's reassuring. I bruise easily under existential pressure." She almost smiled, almost. "You claimed," she said, rotating a star cluster with a flick of her wrist, "that fear is lonely. Clarify." He approached cautiously, boots clicking softly against the metallic floor. Up close, the faint glow beneath her skin traced along her temples and down her neck like living circuitry. Her long ears angled slightly toward him, attentive despite her controlled posture. "When everyone fears you," he said, "they stop telling you the truth. I possess advanced surveillance networks. I'm sure you do. But there's a difference between data and honesty. Data doesn't argue with you." She turned then, regarding him with measured intensity. "You argue." "I negotiate," he corrected, sometimes loudly. A small projection flared between them, outer rim territories flashing in amber warning tones. "3 governors are mobilizing defense platforms," she said. "They test my resolve." "Or they test your patience," he replied. "There's a difference." Her gaze sharpened. "You speak as though you understand imperial governance." "I once managed a research team of 12, he said gravely. "Half of them thought they should be in charge, the other half thought they were underpaid. It's not identical, but the emotional landscape is familiar." A faint sound escaped her, something dangerously close to a laugh. She dismissed the projections and crossed to the viewport. The stars beyond reflected faintly in her eyes. "They believe my strength is absolute," she said. "If I hesitate, they will fracture the empire." He joined her at the transparent wall, keeping a respectful distance. "Maybe they don't need absolute strength. Maybe they need visible humanity." Her ears twitched. "I am not human." "You look close enough to qualify for the metaphor," he said lightly. "Besides, ears aside, you carry responsibility the same way we do, poorly and with too much caffeine." "I do not consume caffeine." "That explains a lot." She folded her arms. "You reduce matters of galactic stability to beverage preferences." "I reduce tension," he said. "It keeps conversations from ending in orbital bombardment." For a moment only the hum of the ship's core filled the space between them. "Why do you persist?" she asked quietly. "You risk execution with every remark." He considered that, because someone should talk to you without flinching. Not because you're harmless, clearly you're not, but because you're alone up here. Her posture stiffened. "I am surrounded by thousands." "You're surrounded by subordinates." The statement hung in the air like a suspended asteroid. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint bioluminescent patterns pulsing beneath her skin in steady rhythm. "You presume intimacy where none exists." "I presume observation," he replied calmly. "You haven't delegated a major decision in 5 cycles. Your sleep metrics are declining, and your tactical AI interrupts you less frequently than it used to." Her eyes flickered briefly toward a concealed sensor array. "You accessed restricted data." "I asked politely," he said. "The AI seems bored." A sharp exhale escaped her. "The Central Intelligence is not bored. It asked me about human comedy." Silence. "You did not," she said slowly, "teach my flagship artificial intelligence stand-up humor." "It requested cultural context," he replied. "I felt obligated." She stared at him as though recalculating his threat level from scratch. Outside the viewport, a distant star flared, routine stellar activity, harmless at this distance. Its light washed across her features, softening them momentarily. "You believe," she said at last, "that fear weakens governance." "I believe fear isolates it," he answered. Isolation makes bad decisions louder. She studied him not as a ruler assessing a subject, but as a strategist confronting an anomaly. Very well, she said. You will attend tomorrow's council session. He blinked as what? She turned back to the holographic console, summoning the flicker of restless governors and unstable borders. As the only being in this vessel who does not tremble. He rubbed the back of his neck. No pressure then. Her long ears angled slightly upward, and this time she did not suppress the faint curve at the corner of her mouth. On the contrary, she said, there will be immense pressure. The council chamber was not built for comfort. It was built for intimidation. Circular tiers of suspended platforms hovered in precise gravitational balance, each occupied by a governor or warlord projected in hard light from distant systems. Some appeared armored, others draped in ceremonial regalia, a few partially mechanical. All of them watched the center dais where she stood. The human stood one step behind her. He had suggested standing beside her, but the security commander had reacted as if he'd proposed juggling antimatter. Compromise had been reached. A holographic star map rotated above them, its surface marked by blinking crimson indicators along the outer rim. Fleet movements, defense platforms activating, quiet rebellions pretending not to be rebellions. One of the governors materialized in sharper resolution, his scaled face splitting in what passed for a smile. Your Majesty, he said smoothly, we were surprised by your invitation to open dialogue. Surprise, she replied evenly, is not inherently negative. Nor is strength, another added pointedly. The human leaned slightly toward her. They rehearsed that line, he murmured, her long ears flicked backward a fraction. Silence. He clasped his hands behind his back, expression innocent. We observe, the scaled governor continued, that your fleet presence near our borders has decreased. It has redeployed, she said. Internal optimization. Optimization, another voice echoed, or hesitation. A subtle shift rippled through the projections. Testing, probing, the human cleared his throat softly. Several holographic heads turned toward him with visible disdain. You address the council, one demanded. She did not look back at him. Speak. He blinked. Oh, all right then. He stepped forward onto the central platform. Instantly, a dozen targeting reticles flickered briefly across his chest before security protocols suppressed them. I've reviewed your regional output metrics, he began conversationally. Trade efficiency is down 12%. Pirate activity is up. 3 of you have independently increased weapons production while publicly advocating stability. You presume to analyze us? A mechanized envoy hissed. I presume you don't enjoy economic collapse, he replied. It's terrible for morale. A low murmur rolled through the chamber. He gestured toward the star map. You think her fleet thinning near your sectors signals weakness. It doesn't. It signals resource strain. There's a difference. Push too hard and you'll fracture the infrastructure you rely on. The scaled governor narrowed his eyes. And what do you suggest, human? That we trust fear to hold us together? He smiled faintly. I suggest you try self-interest. It's remarkably reliable. A few projections flickered as their operators recalibrated emotional displays. She has ruled through dominance, another voice said. Why change now? The queen stepped forward, voice steady. Because dominance is efficient, it is not sustainable. Silence followed. Real silence this time, not the kind engineered into walls. You admit limitation. Someone pressed. I admit capacity, she replied. I cannot govern fractured systems while extinguishing external threats. Cooperation increases survival probability. The human nodded approvingly. See, practical. Several glares targeted him again. A red alert pulsed suddenly across the star map. Unidentified vessels emerging from fold space along the outer perimeter. Sleek signatures, military. The chamber erupted in overlapping transmissions. Pirate coalition. Negative, configuration unfamiliar. Outer rim alignment confirmed. The human squinted at the data streaming past. That, he muttered, is what happens when tension builds without snacks. This is not a moment for levity, the security commander snapped. It's always a moment for levity, he shot back. Otherwise everyone starts shooting. She raised one hand. The chamber quieted instantly. Those vessels, she said, eyes fixed on the projections, belong to a splinter faction seeking to accelerate this council's uncertainty. They exploit perceived weakness, a governor observed. Yes, she agreed calmly, and they miscalculate. She turned slightly toward the human. Your proposal. He inhaled slowly. Open channel, broadcast shared defense pact, make this attack an attack on all of you. You assume they will agree. I assume they dislike being invaded. A tense pause stretched. Then the scaled governor inclined his head. If the pact ensures proportional resource distribution. Draft terms in real time, she commanded her AI. Holographic text cascaded between the platforms. The mechanized envoy hesitated, then nodded once. We will commit 2 fleets. 3, another corrected. Within seconds, confirmations began stacking across the projection grid. The human exhaled. See, cooperative survival, very fashionable this season. She glanced at him, and despite the escalating alerts, something like quiet satisfaction flickered in her expression. You gamble boldly, she said under her breath. I gamble logically, he replied, also loudly. Outside the chamber, engines roared to life. Joint fleets, once rivals, aligned their vectors toward the incoming threat. The council projections steadied, no longer probing but calculating together. She stepped to the center once more, her presence filling the space without the need for threat. Let this be recorded, she declared. Unity is not submission. It is strategy. The human folded his arms, watching the red indicators begin to thin as allied forces converged. Not bad, he murmured, for someone allegedly terrifying. Her long ears angled subtly toward him. Do not test that assessment, she replied. He smiled. Wouldn't dream of it. The joint fleets did not move like frightened animals scattering from a predator. They moved like a single organism learning, for the first time, that it had more than one heartbeat. From the command deck, she watched the tactical overlay bloom in coordinated formations. Outer Rim destroyers locking shields with Imperial cruisers. Artillery platforms aligning firing arcs instead of aiming suspiciously at one another. The Splinter Faction's vessels, sleek and overconfident, hesitated as sensor returns multiplied beyond their projections. They expected fracture, her admiral observed. They will receive mathematics, she replied calmly. The human stood beside the primary console, reviewing incoming data with the mild frown of someone comparing grocery prices. Their formation is aggressive but shallow, he said. They're relying on shock value. They underestimate unity, she said. They underestimate paperwork, he corrected. That defense pact was terrifyingly thorough. A faint, unmistakable curve touched her mouth. Outside the viewport, beams of coherent light stitched across the void. Coordinated salvos, precise and measured. The splinter ships attempted a flanking maneuver, only to encounter allied vessels already positioned in anticipation. Confusion rippled through enemy lines, retreat vectors flickered. Signal them, she ordered. Offer surrender. Her tactical officer blinked. Your Majesty. Offer it, she repeated. The channel opened. Her image projected across the battlefield, composed luminous patterns beneath her skin glowing faintly. Her long ears angled slightly back, not in aggression but in focus. You miscalculated, she said evenly. Withdraw. Lay down arms, join the accord. A pause followed. Then one enemy cruiser powered down weapons. Another followed. Within minutes, the rest disengaged, folding out of combat space in scattered retreat. Silence settled over the command deck, thick and almost disbelieving. The admiral exhaled. Minimal casualties. The human nodded slowly. Turns out cooperation is more efficient than fear, who knew? She turned toward him. You did. He shrugged. I suspected. I didn't have orbital cannons to test the theory. In the days that followed, the Empire did not collapse. It recalibrated. Governors who once postured now attended open strategic forums. Resource distribution became transparent, if occasionally argumentative. The central AI began hosting moderated debates instead of compiling intimidation statistics. She delegated. The first time she did, half the command structure waited for her to retract the order. She did not. Instead, she walked the lower decks without an escort. Engineers froze when they saw her, then blinked when she asked about coolant efficiency rather than loyalty metrics. She listened, she asked questions. She allowed pauses without filling them with authority. In the observatory, beneath the patient turning of distant stars, she found him once more. You altered the trajectory of an empire, she said. He shook his head. You did, I just talked too much. Her ears angled forward slightly. You were afraid. Absolutely, he admitted. Terrified, I just decided fear wasn't allowed to run the conversation. She studied him not as a ruler assessing utility, but as someone recognizing a mirror she had avoided. I believed fear ensured control, she said quietly. It ensured isolation. And now, he asked. She glanced at the star map hovering between them, no longer marked by aggressive red but by interconnected lines of shared defense and trade. Now, she said, it ensures nothing. A comfortable silence followed. You know, he added thoughtfully, your reputation will take a hit. Yes, she agreed, fewer beings trembling at your name. Unfortunate, she said dryly. On the bright side, he continued, you may finally get a vacation. She regarded him with mock severity. I do not require rest. He raised an eyebrow. You blink more now. She paused, then deliberately blinked once. Demonstration complete. He laughed softly. Beyond the viewport, Allied fleets drifted in steady formation, not as instruments of oppression, but as guardians of a fragile, deliberate peace. Transmissions flowed between systems, debates, negotiations, shared research initiatives. The Empire had not softened, it had stabilized. You stood without fear, she said at last. Why? He met her gaze steadily. Because someone had to see you as a person before you could see yourself that way. Her long ears stilled. The weight she carried had not vanished, it had redistributed. Then remain, she said. Advise, challenge, irritate. I excel at the last one, he replied. I am aware. They stood side by side, watching stars burn in dignified silence. Not ruler and subject, not conqueror and captive. Just two figures beneath an infinite sky, no longer bound by legend but by choice. And across the galaxy, when her name was spoken now, it carried something unfamiliar. Not terror, respect.